Open meeting for Thursday, November 20th, 2025. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, November 6, 2025, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, November 6, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 11, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 13, accepting all uncontested alternatives listed in the final decision matrix, and directing commission staff to prepare an order approving WPSC's 2026 fuel cost plan consistent with those determinations.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notice of proceeding associated with agenda item 11.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
In docket 6690 ER 107, I move we approve Wisconsin Public Service Corporation's 2026 fuel cost plan consistent with the Commission Secretary's description.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That does bring us to our first of two discussion items today. Item number 12, docket 6630 ER 107, the application of Wisconsin Electric Power Company, or WEBCO, for approval of its 2026 fuel cost plan. Commissioner Nieto is going to lead our discussion of this, so I will turn it over to her now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strand. All right, so as Chairperson Strand just said, we are discussing the 2026 fuel cost plan for Wisconsin Electric Power Company, or WEPCO. As folks following along know, fuel cost plans are a look forward in order to estimate the next year's fuel costs. Fuel costs are part of an automatic adjustment clause, which is a cost recovery mechanism that was developed to deal with substantial, recurring, volatile, and uncontrollable operating expenses such as fuels. The estimated costs for fuels are included on customer bills as part of the electric rates that customers pay. Then, when we know what the actual cost turned out to be, we do a true-up. So if customers owe over 2% more than what we estimated, the utility can collect the amount as a surcharge with carrying costs at the short-term debt rate after a hearing and prudency review of the higher-than-expected costs. If the estimate that we set is more than 2% too high, customers receive that money back as a credit with carrying costs at the short-term debt rate. That's a high level of how this works. So where we're at right now, WEPCO filed its estimate of its monitored fuel costs for the coming year. Commission staff audited the utilities forecast as usual to guarantee proper estimates of the costs, consistency with applicable requirements, and to identify any other issues that will assist the Commission in approving a fuel cost plan for the purpose of establishing rates. So we're going to decide on the estimate that will appear in rates on 2026 bills, and then next year we'll review how close our estimate was to actual costs, and then we will true up the difference. We want to get as close as possible to the correct estimate here. As usual, fuel is a large portion of utilities' operating expenses, and we review the records in these cases to determine whether these costs are based on the full audit, including economic dispatch modeling, a justified estimate of what is needed to adequately serve customers and serve them in a way that is in the customer's interest. And finally, approval of a fuel cost plan by the Commission per PSC Chapter 116 is not a determination that the fuel cost plan is reasonable or prudent for reconciliation purposes. So what we have here, the applicant filed for 2026 monitored fuel costs at a level of $43.42 per megawatt hour. Staff did the audit, and after all of its adjustments and most recent update, the amount increased to $45.24 per megawatt hour. The total amount that staff audited and came to, if compared to what we set for 2025, is a 4.57% increase compared to the 2025 estimate. So fuel costs in 26 are estimated to be more than what they were estimated to be in 25. commission staff in its audit made 12 adjustments to what the applicant filed. Those adjustments actually increased the applicant's filed fuel cost plan by nearly $43 million, most of which was due to a fuel pricing error that staff found in the initial materials. 4 of the 12 adjustments were decreases to what was filed, most of them smaller decreases. And then adjustment number 12 is the lone contested issue we have in this case, and the remaining issues in the decision matrix are uncontested. So we do not need to discuss the uncontested issues today, and we will be focusing on the one remaining contested issue. I'll also note Wisconsin Industrial Electric Group was the sole intervener in the proceeding, and we also had one public comment. So with that, we can go to issue 2, but I'll take a brief pause should either of my colleagues wish to say anything at this point.
I just want to thank you for that very helpful description of where we are in this proceeding and what the purpose of it is. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
I have no additional comments. Echo the thanks of Chair Strand, and you did a great job explaining it.
Thank you. All right, so issue 2 is our one issue. This is about that adjustment number 12. It reflects the removal of all gas co-firing and related demand charges from the modeling of the Elm Road and Weston coal units. The impact of this adjustment is a decrease in monitored fuel costs of $10.353 million. And the removal of the portion pertaining to Weston is not contested. So the contested portion that we're talking about here is pertaining to Elm Road or ERGS, and that amount is $9.763 million. This issue is somewhat unique. I looked at it quite closely. I ultimately am coming in at alternative 1, which would be to maintain commission staff's adjustment. I'll explain why here, and I'm interested to hear where my colleagues came out on this unique issue as well. So basically, what I found is that for the 2026 test year, the applicant is proposing to conduct natural gas co-firing testing on ERGS units 1 and 2 at various times and at various fuel blends. And the utility presents this testing as part of a longer-term transition at ERGS to being able to use 100% natural gas as a fuel source. And according to the applicant, this conversion strategy is intended to keep the units in compliance with recent EPA greenhouse gas regulations and allow the units to operate beyond 2038 in light of those regulations, and is also to meet anticipated firm electric load growth. There is a pending application with the commission, which was just filed in October, to convert ERGS to allow for 100% fuel flexibility. And so on the one hand, the commission hasn't authorized the conversion of the Elm Road units to 100% fuel flexibility for natural gas. It has long been a very consistent commission practice not to allow recovery of costs that rely on the presumption of future commission decisions. And then on the other hand, I think I understand that applicant statements to be indicating that this testing would be beneficial to customers even if the ERGS fuel flexibility project doesn't go through or isn't happening, because the applicant still needs to be able to flex fuel at least the 40% sustained levels per the current EPA requirements that are in place. Has to do that by 2030, and I'm understanding that the testing would help prepare for that and would allow the utility to understand the economics of co-firing various gas and coal blend levels at the plant. And then this is also somewhat unique to ERGS as a plant itself. So the plant can currently flex at 30% sustained levels, and we are in 2025 right now. So staff's analysis maintains that the proposed co-firing should be removed from the fuel plan because it is not economic, and its benefit appears to be to support a project that is not yet approved. And so absent substantiation, such as plans, schedules, or any quantitative or analytical information to support the need for the additional expense in 2026, staff did not find the appropriate justification to include the expense in the plan. The applicant asserts that conducting this testing now may lead to savings in the future. The record does contain little detail about what specific insights the testing is expected to provide and how those insights would reduce costs or the scale of potential savings versus the dollar premium associated with the testing. So again, I think what the utility is saying, without going too far in making the argument for the utility, is that regardless whether the fuel flexibility project is approved, testing is needed for minimum EPA compliance by 2030, and it's cheaper and more beneficial to customers possibly to do that testing in 2026 than it might be in 27, 28, or 29. I could surmise the reason for that, but I won't do guessing here. I think what staff is saying is that, yes, we understand that picking a fuel is not 100% of the time a question of what burns the best or even what is the cheapest. Each of the major fuels has economic and operational advantages, and even environmental and other advantages and disadvantages at any given time. And what staff is trying to do isn't to micromanage or prescribe operational choices, but set a well-vetted, accurate budget that is justified in this proceeding as the correct amount of dollars needed to serve customers with fuels in 2026 and isn't more than what is needed. So I think staff did a good job of trying to ask questions and get specifically to the why for the testing with regard to the year 2026, the levels of flexibility needed, the milestones for compliance, et cetera. I ultimately didn't find substantial evidence answering those questions or providing that substantiation for this dollar amount. So I was at maintaining staff's adjustment on item number 12. And again, interested on how my colleagues navigated this one. Chair Strand?
Thank you very much for that explanation. I agree with the good points that you made. I struggled with this one as well and went back and forth, and I was happy that this was our only contested issue because we were able to dive into it and really do that full review and analysis. But ultimately, I ended up at alternative one as well. I think we as a commission have been really clear about needing strong justification for things in the record no matter what. And to me, this was just thin, which is also what you said. I didn't see enough to demonstrate the operational need for doing the co-firing at ERGs in 2026. I understand, as you pointed out, what that could mean going forward. But again, for this decision, in this case, in this record, it was just not enough justification for me. And I think the staff, like you said, did a good job of identifying this and kind of fleshing it out to the extent that they could to help us make a decision on it. So I'm at alt one, basically for the reasons that you stated, but I appreciate your discussion of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strand. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. Yeah, I was in the same place for similar reasons. I thought I appreciated staff trying to gain insight into the timeline of the flexibility project that we now have an application for, but those connections as to why it had to happen in 2026 and what the benefits of that might be were not clear. It was just, stated as an intent related to that project. And I think the points you made on the fact that we could then take the leap, presuming that that application gets approved, which we do not do that, would be the only way to sort of make sense of that without additional information on the timeline. Another piece that I focused on was that the applicant stated that the co-firing might not be uneconomic at all times and that they could do this economically. And so with this alternative that it sounds like we're all supporting, this would still allow the applicant to do this co-firing when it is economic. And so we're not foreclosing the testing, which is another important piece, because if for some reason it does have to happen this year and the applicant didn't show us exactly why, they're still able to, depending on how the fuel prices shake out. So that was why I landed at alt one.
Thank you. And good point on the ability to actually do in operations what is necessary as compared to the budget setting exercise that we're doing here today. With us all at alternative one here, the only other thing I would note is that change does flow through automatically to a small portion of the WPS fuel case in the final fuel run, which is why we're not going to need to discuss that case that we already just approved. And with that, are we ready for a motion?
I think as long as legal counsel has everything they need, we're in a good spot. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, in docket 6630 ER 107, I move we approve Wisconsin Electric Power Company's 2026 fuel cost plan consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you again, Commissioner Nieto. So our last discussion item for today is number 14, docket 3270 UR 126, which is the application of Madison Gas and Electric Company for authority to adjust electric and natural gas rates. Commissioner Hawkins is going to lead our discussion of this. So I will thank him for that and turn it over to him.
All right, thanks, Chair Strand. So as mentioned, we're going to be discussing Madison Gas and Electric's rate case for the test years of 2026 and 2027. In this proceeding, like the settlement we were deciding on a couple of weeks ago, we are in a unique position because it includes a comprehensive and unanimous settlement agreement with all intervening parties signing on to the agreement, resolving all of the issues in the rate case. So this is, again, a different procedural path for us than the typical contested rate case that we often have to deal with, which means that we are not going to go issue by issue, and instead we only have 2 issues before us to determine the reasonableness of the settlement. I will provide some initial comments that review the procedural components of the case with an overview of the timeline and a description of all the parties that are involved in the settlement, and then a brief overview of the settlement law after that, and then we'll get into our 2 issues that the commission has to decide on today. So, a timeline of this case leading us here to November 20th. MG&E filed its biennial rate case application in April of this year, requesting an adjustment to gas and electric rates for the test years 26 and 27. In the initial application, MG&E was seeking electric rate increases of 4.89% in 2026 and 4.33% in 2027, and natural gas rate increases of 2.33% for 2026, and then an incremental 2.16% for 2027. As with other rate cases, the commission staff immediately began working on the case, issuing data requests, conducting analysis to produce a staff audit, and reviewing all of the application's provisions. In late August, interveners and commission staff filed direct testimony in this case. And then on September 10th, the applicant filed a full settlement agreement executed by all parties, inclusive of fuel costs for the 2026 and 2027 test years. The settlement agreement as filed had lower increases. The electric rate increase for 2026 was set at 0.04% of an increase, and then 2027 was at 3.76% incremental increase. And on the gas side, 2026 was a 2.77% increase, and in 2027, a 2.04% incremental increase for gas rates. After the filing of the agreement, the party hearing was held virtually on September 24th. And shortly after that, on the 30th, 2 public hearings were held in person and virtually. Public comments were accepted at the hearings and through the PSC website and mail. Hundreds of written public comments were submitted, and 3 people testified at the public hearings. The commission staff issued a memo summarizing the settlement and presenting the 2 decision items that we have here today, and that was issued on October 13th. And lastly, I would like to note that as is standard practice with rate cases, a delayed exhibit with updates to the monitored fuel costs that we were just talking about in our earlier decision was received on November 11th, and we will have a chance to discuss in more detail given the decision that we just made in the WEPCO case on how that impacts our decision item 2 today. So I want to start off by thanking everyone that participated in the docket, given that it was a unique process and different than the typical rate case that we experience. I appreciate all of the public comments and those that came out to the public meeting to provide their perspectives and stories. Through reading of the public comments, it's clear that there are many citizens in the MG&E service territory that are concerned about any rate increase, and these comments in my review of them are helpful in completing the picture of the impacts from the decisions that we make here at the commission. and also help inform the needs of various programs, some of which are subject of the settlement agreement. I want to especially thank our incredible staff that have been working really hard during a very busy time at the commission. Staff conducted important and in-depth reviews and analysis during the initial phases of the proceeding. And then once realizing we had another settlement on our hands, they did a great job pivoting to support that process and facilitating informed decision-making by this commission. I'd like to repeat the thanks I offered a couple weeks ago to the legal team for their insight and advice in working with me through this settlement process. So thanks to the legal eagles out there. The case before us includes a great deal of collaboration between all the parties involved, and in my view, we have a group of parties that represent a broad range of customers and groups that represent different customer interests throughout the MG&E territory. There were 5 parties that were involved in the settlement and that intervened in this case. We have Blacks for Political and Social Action of Dane County, which I will refer to as BPSA. This group was formed in 2020 with a mission to involve Black citizens in the political process and advance economic and social justice. We have perhaps our most frequent flyer, the Citizens Utility Board, or CUB. CUB advocates on behalf of utility customers at large, and CUB serves as an independent consumer advocate for all residential, small commercial, and small industrial customers of IOUs here in Wisconsin. The next party was the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 965. IBEW is a labor union with hundreds of members who perform utility industry construction work. MG&E employs about 233 IBEW members, and many of IBEW members live in the MG&E service territory. We also had Renew Wisconsin. Renew is a nonprofit organization that works to advance the state's renewable energy goals. And we had Wisconsin Industrial Energy Group. WIG it has membership comprised of large industrial customers. Part of their role is to participate in rate case proceedings on behalf of their members and advocate for lower energy costs and supply. So next we'll pivot to the settlement law and the framework of our review for this settlement agreement. We, the Commission, are reviewing this settlement agreement subject to the applicable statutory criteria that were put in place in 2018 when the legislature enacted Wisconsin Act 136, which created Wisconsin Statute 196.026 that governs settlement agreements. Every time I mention a section of a statute, I will be referring to Wisconsin Statute 196.026. This statute prescribes procedural and substantive criteria required for settlements. In Section 1 of the statute, it encourages parties to enter into settlements. Sections 2 through 6 establish procedural and substantive requirements for settlements. Section 7 provides the Commission may approve a settlement agreement if all criteria are met. And Section 8 states that the Commission may approve a settlement agreement in whole or in part with conditions deemed necessary by the Commission. The first item before us examines whether the applicable procedural requirements of the statute have been satisfied. And I will continue this overview of the settlement law framework when with discussion of specific criteria and how they were satisfied as I present my position on issue 1. And then we'll turn it over to my colleagues to provide any opening comments as well as their perspectives on the first issue. So for issue 1, we have to review the criteria set forth in the statute. It requires a written settlement agreement with supporting documents be filed at the Commission and served on all parties. This was clearly satisfied as we see both the written settlement agreement with supporting documents was filed as required. Additionally, all parties involved agreed to a resolution of all issues in this case. Criteria 2, which is Section 5, requires convening a conference if all parties do not support the proposed settlement agreement. Here, all parties supported the agreement, so this criteria was moot. The next criteria requires that within 30 days of service, each party must respond in writing indicating agreement, objection, or non-objection to the settlement agreement. We received letters of support filed and or support expressed through testimony in a timely manner which satisfies this criterion. The next criterion, which is section 7A, requires that parties who objected, non-objected, or failed to respond had reasonable opportunity to present evidence and arguments in opposition. Like subsection 5, this section does not apply because no party opposed the agreement. So for my position on this issue, given all of this, it is clear to me that the applicable procedural requirements of 196.026 have been satisfied, putting me at alternative 1 for our first issue. And now I'll turn it over to Chairperson Strand.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins, for that great introduction. I will echo your thanks to all parties involved. And I'll just echo some comments that I made on November 6th from our discussion of the Wisconsin Power and Light Settlement, and just note that in my tenure as chairperson, I have consistently and persistently encouraged applicants and interveners to work together to develop viable solutions and attempt to reach consensus on important rate case issues through constructive collaboration, especially because we hadn't seen a ton of that up until this year. So I really do want to thank the applicant and the intervening and settling parties for heeding those calls and for all the time and effort they put in to negotiate, develop, and finalize the settlement agreement that is before us. I think it's really helpful. It's very constructive, and it's a good use of the settlement law, which you did a great job of introducing us to and walking us through. So thank you for that. The only other thing I'll add is just since you're there, I'm also in the same place that you were on our first decision point, alt one, that the procedural requirements were satisfied. So thank you.
Great. Commissioner Nieto?
Thank you. Yep, I'll echo the thanks you gave at the outset as well. A lot of great work on this settlement. And I was at Alt 1 as well regarding the applicable procedural requirements. And I would also thank you for your great opening remarks and good job avoiding saying 196.026 10 times.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's quite a mouthful. All right, so since we're all in the same place, we'll move on to our second issue. The second issue before us today is the evaluation of the agreement under sections 7B and C of said statute. As was previously noted, every participating party signed onto this agreement, fully accepting it, and every issue was addressed. I would like to remind everyone that the Commission is not involved in the negotiations leading to the settlement agreements and does not take part in drafting them. The Commission is not a party in the settlement. The Commission plays a different role for a settlement than a contested rate case as intended by the statute. And Commission staff still made necessary and meaningful contributions to the record, including review, analysis, testimony, data requests, audits, adjustments, and the final memo development that we are working through today. This work informed and influenced the final product that we have. And with that, I would like to make one note to clarify something from the memo in the section on the renewable natural gas pilot, the RNG pilot section, which is page 38 of our memo. The memo did not capture that the applicant will incorporate into the gas quality minimum requirements final form in their final tariff the specific constituent limits for some chemical gas components, specifically siloxanes, ammonia, biologicals, and voluntary organic compounds. And in accordance with the applicant's rebuttal testimony, they have committed to including that in their final tariff. So it wasn't clear in the memo, but in testimony that did get cleared up. So just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page there. And aside from that minor clarification of the record, I will acknowledge that there are issues in the settlement agreement that have been heavily contested in other rate proceedings and would likely have had a lot of discussion about them had this been a fully contested rate case. But we are not here today to speculate on the discussions that may have been. And so I'll step through the two criteria that we have to review here. Section 7B requires that the Commission find the public interest is adequately represented by the parties who entered into the settlement agreement. So for my position on this issue, I see that this criterion has been reasonably satisfied. The 5 involved parties represent a broad range of the public interest, including residential customers, marginalized communities, small businesses, and large industrial customers. Not only that, the parties represent and advocate for a range of relevant issues such as environmental responsibility, local workforce development, business and economic interests, and affordability. These parties more than adequately represent the public interests in my view. The second section, 7C, directs the commission must find the settlement agreement represents a fair and reasonable resolution to the docket, is supported by substantial evidence on the record as a whole, and complies with the applicable law, including finding that any rates resulting from the settlement agreement are just and reasonable. My position on this subsection was that there was unanimous agreement among the parties representing a fair and reasonable resolution. The record was supported with substantial evidence that includes testimony, hearing transcripts, analysis, discovery exhibits, and additional requested information from the applicant, and multiple opportunities for engagement with the public. It was really imperative to have such a robust record to be able to fully review the settlement and all the components contained within it. Upon a close review of the applicable law, I believe that the settlement before us does comply with this criteria. The rate-making components were closely reviewed and evaluated and result in something that all participating parties saw as just and reasonable. This puts me at alternative 1, that the settlement agreement meets the relevant statutory criteria. So in addition to this decision for issue 2, we have to consider the conditions that the commission may choose to place on the settlement agreement. For that sub-issue, I am at alternative sub-A, which approves the settlement agreement in full with conditions consistent with our discussion. Specifically, I support the inclusion of all of the standard order conditions A through O that are listed on our memo, pages 41 through 43. And related to the additional conditions that are proposed in the memo, I do not support the 3 additional conditions proposed in our memo. I'll speak to why that is just briefly. And I do have an additional condition to ensure transparency around the new LMI programs that were included as part of the settlement. So for the new condition that I'm proposing, there was $500,000 agreed to for each of the 2 test years, targeted at LMI programs focused on increasing thermostat enrollment in MG&E's Connect program, installation and energy assessments, and partnering with community-based organizations on outreach. While the applicant, CUB, and BPSA agreed to work collaboratively to flesh out a plan for spending these dollars by March 1st of next year, there is very little detail in the record about how that will occur or the expected outcome of such collaboration. And although the applicant will not be requesting recovery from ratepayers for this money that will be spent on the programs, it is still important for the commission to be able to have a comprehensive view of MG&E's LMI programs in totality and how they work together. With all of the close collaboration that has gone on as part of this settlement process, I have no doubt that that will continue in developing the details of these programs. However, to ensure that the commission has visibility, I recommend a condition that just enshrines making sure that we get that visibility here. So I'll read off my proposed language, and then I have additional clarifications, and then we'll get to all of your thoughts on it. So the applicant shall work in coordination with CUB and BPSA to develop a plan for spending the agreed to amount for targeted LMI programs that includes, but is not limited to, descriptions of how the annual budget will be allocated across program areas, design and delivery of the programs, and proposed evaluation metrics. This plan shall be submitted to the commission by April 1st of each test year. So I guess I'll pause there and see if, we didn't really break into ideas. Yeah, sure. So my proposed condition was the applicant shall work in coordination with CUB and BPSA to develop a plan for spending the agreed to amount for targeted LMI programs that includes, but is not limited to, descriptions of how the annual budget will be allocated across program areas, design and delivery of the programs, and proposed evaluation metrics. The plan shall be submitted to the commission by April 1st of each test year.
Thank you. Do you want to finish and then?
I sure
'cause
can if
then-
you feel
then don't have
confident
to
going
come-
through.
well, then you don't have to come back to us for whatever else you're going to say.
Deal.
So
I'll
finish, and then we'll go through the various things that we need to weigh in on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So the last thing I really wanted to note here was that we had updated data request response related to the fuel costs. And let's see here. So this is the 3 proposed additional conditions that I'm not supporting. And so the first of the 3 was related to basically a condition requesting that the applicant update information related to their fuel costs. That's not necessary because we received a delayed exhibit with the monitored fuel costs updated, and that is delayed, and a delayed exhibit from staff. But I would like to make a clarification that I alluded to earlier, that delayed exhibit includes 2 different total amounts for the fuel costs that were dependent on the decision we just made in the WEPCO case. So the delayed exhibit include the settlement proposed monitored fuel costs, but it also had a breakout for total fuel costs excluding ERG's gas co-firing. Since we just decided on the fuel case for WEPCO, we have further insight into this ERG's co-firing question. And so in our discussion of that record, we chose to exclude uneconomic natural gas co-firing and related demand charges for the WEPCO fuel cost plan. And I wanted to bring this up just to make sure we are all in agreement that, to be consistent with our recent decision from 10 minutes ago, that the total monitored fuel costs that we are going to authorize as part of the settlement agreement are those excluding the ERG's gas co-firing for 2026. And so I just wanted to check in with my colleagues on that component. Are you okay with this one piece of the overall settlement agreement?
It has to carry over because of the ownership, co-ownership issue. So
Okay.
yep, I'm fine with that.
Commissioner
Thank
Nieto?
you.
Same here, and thanks for bringing it up.
Okay. So that was one of the 3 proposed conditions, which is not required because we have the updated fuel costs, and then we've clarified which actual fuel costs we will be including in our approval. And the other 2, the next one was the long-term debt cost reporting. This was also proposed in the WPL settlement, and we did not support including it there. I similarly do not think we need to include it in this rate case. And then the final one was related to the renewable natural gas heating value billing, and I don't think this condition is necessary as it requires granularity that is not consistent with previous commission decisions on RNG tariffs for other utilities. So I'm comfortable with the scope of the RNG pilot and the assurances of the oversight as fuel quality measures that I spoke to earlier have already been spoken to. So that is the totality of my decisions for issue 2, and I'll now turn things over to Chair Strand.
Thank you. I appreciate the helpful discussion and explanation of the issues before us, the statutory criteria, and then your reasoning for your positions. The only other thing I'll add on that point is just, as we talked about in our earlier settlement discussion on November 6th, that just to be very, very clear that in supporting the settlement agreement, that we are doing so with the understanding that nothing in the decision should be misconstrued as precedent setting or signal our support of other dockets to be taken up in the future. This is limited to this specific settlement agreement and the various components in it, the 4 corners of it, period. In terms of the decision items, even with your additional condition, I believe you're still at alt 1, sub alt A, because it's consistent with the commission's discussion. So I am also at alt 1, sub alt A for the questions before us. Specific to your additional condition, I do have some reservations because, as you acknowledge, these are not ratepayer dollars. I worry about adding those conditions that aren't standard but relate to the settlement because they are addressed in the comments. They have committed to do this. They've actually committed to do this on or before March 1st of the corresponding year, which is a month earlier than what's being proposed. I'm not gonna fight you guys on this, so I am curious to hear what Commissioner Nieto has to say, but those are my only hesitations with the addition of that proposed condition. But either way, thank you, first of all, alt one, sub all day for sure, and then we'll hear what Commissioner Nieto has to say about the additional condition.
Thank you. I was also at the Alt 1, Sub Alt A, like you both. And so, first of all, I would say thank you, Chair Strand, for the note on the precedent as well, noting that in this case too. Commissioner Hawkins, you had mentioned the, going back to the pipeline safety issue earlier, the incorporation into the G-52 gas quality minimum requirements. You did not envision that being a separate condition because it was agreed to on the stand, and just highlighting it here so that folks recall that that update is forthcoming, essentially.
Yeah, that was my take on it, that it was committed to, and so I didn't think an additional condition was necessary. But if you have a different interpretation, I'm open to that.
No, if nobody else does, I don't either. I think it's already been committed to. We've highlighted it here, and it's a tariff update that everybody will know needs to be updated. So I was fine with that, but just making sure. And then getting to the LMI condition, I was generally comfortable with it. I think, to Chair Strand's point about the March date versus the April 1st date, curious to hear any insights you have into the April 1st date into the condition. I had thought about this a little bit as well in terms of above the line dollars versus below the line dollars, and I was comfortable with something along these lines. I know we've had other below the line programs for which we've required information to be in tariff, for example, because some of these programs might be programs that need to be in tariff, or they might need reporting, or they might need some other sort of application. So I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, but kind of curious about the dates. Thanks.
Yeah, the dates were just to provide some wiggle room if they fall behind on their own self-imposed timeline. So that was the thinking there. And then I had the same thought about the appropriateness of the reporting requirement above the line versus below the line. And for me, it came down to just ensuring we have visibility of how all these programs fit together, and also that, there might be something, totally different or wild going on. And if we don't know about it, even if it's not ratepayer dollars, we need to know how all of the various programs sort of interact and work together. So I appreciate that you pointed out that this is, nothing new, and we've done this for other similar programs before. So that's why I landed at requiring the reporting.
I can support the reporting as well. And I don't have any additional conditions to add to the Alt 1 Sub Alt A.
Okay, so I can join you guys, even I said my piece. So I just want to make sure that legal has everything that they need.
Yep. all
Great.
set.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion on this. Thank you.
I will just mention
Oh,
that,
yep.
as a standard practice with IOU rate cases, we'll bring the draft final decision back before you. So any of those nuances, you can get a second crack at.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, in docket 3270, UR 126, I move we approve the request by Madison Gas and Electric Company for authority to adjust electric and natural gas rates consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Super quickly, that does wrap our IOU rate case work for 2025, which, as you've heard, was unique this year in that of the 3 IOUs that were up for rate cases this year, 2 of them had unanimous settlements on every issue and with all the interveners signatory to the settlement. And the 3rd was a contested case with very few contested issues. So I just want to give a huge thanks to my colleagues, Commissioner Hawkins and Commissioner Nieto, who did share in the discussion leads with us. I think we had a really good full team effort, and they did an awesome job leading discussion of those. So thank you both very much. And then one more bit of housekeeping before we conclude our official business today. I do want to acknowledge one of our retiring PSC team members, Jackie Madison, on what will be her last rate case day at the commission. Lucky her. While Jackie will still be with us at the commission for a few more weeks, I do want to take the open meeting opportunity to thank her for her 24 years of dedicated service to the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin. Briefly, Jackie started at the commission as a public utility auditor and through the years worked her way up to director of the Bureau of Audit and Accounting, which is a role she's served in since 2019. Jackie has been integral to the commission's work for years, striving to ensure that commissioners have all the audit and accounting information necessary to make decisions in some of our most complex regulatory proceedings, including rate cases. She has thoroughly trained numerous staff and helped develop many of the processes and applications we use today, including annual reports and the online municipal rate case application, which even earned her the title of Muni Queen. Sounds like a sash is needed for that one. So I do want to sincerely thank Jackie for her 24 years of service to the commission. Her hard work, expertise, and guidance helped shape and strengthen the PSC's audit and accounting practices, and we very much appreciate her impactful contributions to utility regulation in Wisconsin. So Jackie, thank you for your efforts. You'll be greatly missed, and I wish you best wishes in your well-deserved next chapter. Commissioner Nieto did work with Jackie for years, and so I'm going to turn it over to her to make sure she has an opportunity to make some remarks as well.
Thanks, Chair Strand. Really similar along the lines of your remarks. I was just thinking back on my time working with Jackie, and I remember the first time I ever talked to Jackie, I had some annual report questions as a new employee, and somebody said, you have to talk to Jackie Madsen. And so I called her up on the telephone, the old-fashioned telephone, not on Teams, and she helped me out. And I feel like she has been helping me out ever since, as she helps all of us figure things out every single day and every single week. And Jackie, you are so smart, you are so knowledgeable, and your knowledge is deep and it goes way back to, and you're also a great leader to your team, and you are a great, kind, trustworthy colleague and a good friend too. So thank you for your service to the PSC.
Thank you very much. Well said. Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I'll pile
Join the
on.
party.
Yeah, I'll pile on. Although I am guilty of being a numbers guy, I'm not an accounting numbers guy. And so I think it was like week 2 here at the commission, I learned how important it was to be very close to Jackie and to go to the source to get the information. And so as the newest commissioner here, I have learned a lot from her. And so Jackie, just thank you for the patience with all my dumb questions, because you were very polite and kind to me, and also able to answer all of the questions. So I'm certainly going to miss knowing that I can go to you for a quick answer on something that is probably known by most. So I really appreciate your patience and teaching. Thanks.
As we say, there's audit and accounting, and then there's utility audit and accounting, which is its own special thing. So thank you, Jackie, and thank you both for your comments. Our official business is now concluded for today. So our next open meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 25th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. because of the Thanksgiving holiday. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Tuesday, November 25, 2025 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.